Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today I'm extremely excited to be sharing with you a little game that we've recently started playing in our pandemic bubble. You know, this government approved notion that you can choose to share the risk of the pandemic with another household if you want to. You're sharing space, sharing breath with other people has become, well, a risk, and we've chosen to share that risk to bubble with our board game friend. Of course, she's more than just a board game friend, but you know, we've been playing, ironically enough, Pandemic with her, for example, throughout this pandemic, using the internet. And so for her in particular, because she lives on her own, it's been a real relief to be able to sit down face to face, have conversations, and play a board game with people for the first time in months. So we've all been enjoying this new experience, and we've recently started playing a fantastic board game called Betrayal at House on the Hill. Now this game is excellent. It's really, really good because it delivers precisely what I hoped it would, based on the artwork and based on the atmosphere that it's trying to engender. You see, we also recently tried playing, in fact just before lockdown started we began, and then we tried again recently to play is it Long Winter Dead of Night, a zombie apocalypse board game which promises an awful lot. It's very grungy, it's got a beautiful aesthetic, lots of tokens, lots of settings in this setup, lots of places to go and explore, for example, for resources to survive. But it feels sort of detached from the reality that it's trying to portray. The fact that you can find, for example, petrol or gas in any location, not just in the petrol station. It feels as though it's not really reflecting the scenarios that it's trying to present you with. Rather, you simply go to a place, turn over a card, find something, come back to your home base, do something. The atmosphere is just a little bit lacking. And one example would be, for example, the home base I picked up on because of the artwork is meant to be a prison. It's meant to be sort of reflecting that Walking Dead season 3 type scenario, but my lovely wife and our board game pal didn't know this. They went, oh really, it's meant to be, oh that's cool I guess. So there's nothing drawing you into the scenario in that game, and we will play it again. I've heard it's a good game, we know it can be a good game. Maybe we just went in the right headspace for it, I don't know. But this game doesn't suffer from any of those problems. It is all the way through precisely what it's trying to portray, and it makes you feel it. It makes you excited in the same way that a horror movie does. It has that horror movie pacing to it by virtue of how the game plays. It feels kind of like a mashup between Cluedo, a haunted house experience, and actually also Cabin in the Woods, the film with the tremendous twist in terms of multiple monster scenarios that could unfold. So it's just wonderful, and you start out in this game in a hallway, a little bit like Cluedo, where someone's been murdered and they've been left on the cellar steps. Except in this instance, so the three players, so three intrepid explorers, go into the house, and room by room you can make 4 moves per turn until you are stopped by an event. So you go into a room and maybe there's a little symbol and a description as to what happens in that room. And all the rooms are gorgeous. They're beautifully rendered. They have lots of implied narrative and story, and you start to feel the house unfolding before you. In fact, we also were playing Haunted House ambient noise on the TV while we were playing this. It was great. And you go into the room, and maybe something will ooze out of the wall, and you have to do a saving roll to get out of that scenario, or maybe something will brush past your head, your ear and your hair, or perhaps there'll be something like a mystic slide that will send you careening down into the cellar. And actually, this house has multiple floors. You have the basement cellar area, you have the first floor, so the ground floor, and you also have the first floor or the second floor, which is upstairs. So actually you have 3 different boards almost that are unfolding as you go. This is from Wizards of the Coast, and so of course it has a slight RPG feel to it as well. Each character has a pentagon character board on which are certain key stats. They include speed, might, sanity, and knowledge, and depending on what happens in this particular encounter in the room, you might gain or lose one of those not so much actually the stat number, but the pegging on the stat number. There are multiple places within each number. So for example, speed might be 4, and even though you gain in speed, your stat may remain 4, which means that you get to roll 4 dice in a speed test scenario. The dice are very particular. They have 1, 2, and blank sides, and they've been balanced very, very well, in so much as they deliver just pitch perfect in terms of the outcomes. So if you need to roll 4 dice and get a roll of 6, then it feels fair, but also feels perilous as well, which is precisely what it has to feel like. As you proceed, you may have these events. You may find items which might be useful. So for example, I found in my first playthrough the dark dice, which allow you to roll, and depending on the roll outcome, you may gain a stat, you may have to lose something, you may have another effect. It's almost like you found a totem or something which can help you in the fight against this haunted house. You can also find omens as you explore the house, and these are very, very important. These are the artifacts that might trigger the big haunting event that's going to kill you or chase you out of the house, or that you have to try and defeat in this particular game. And they're very evocative. You know, there's the spirit board. There's things like a crystal ball, a haunted ring is another one, a mask, I believe we came up with as well. And each of these is a risk, because the more omens that are uncovered by the players, the higher your saving roll has to be every time an omen is uncovered. So if there are 4 omens, if this is the 4th omen that you've uncovered in the house, you have to roll a 4 or more on these on a dice roll, in order to avoid the haunting. But if you roll 3 or less, then the haunting is enacted. And this is a beautiful part of the game, because depending on the omen that's triggered the haunting and the room that it was found in, there's this whole cross-referenced grid that will tell you precisely what haunt has been triggered, and it's really clever, because for example, the spirit board brought out the banshee in our most recent playthrough, and the banshee is then loose in the house, and she has a very particular way of playing, and the person who's discovered the omen isn't necessarily the person who's then in charge of the banshee. It could be, depending on the haunt, someone else who suddenly becomes in charge of that creature. Your player may be dead, or your player may be alive and under the influence of the creature. So for example, with the banshee, you're in love with her, and you're trying to help her kill everyone else in the house. And this is so clever, because in our first playthrough, I forgot what the item was, but we triggered essentially a squid monster, an eldritch being, and this was represented by 2 tokens per tentacle. One that was the arm, as it were, and one that was the tentacle that was sort of weaving its way through the house. And the tokens would get further apart the further away the suckers were, and the suckers were trying to grab people and pull them down to the monster in the cellar. And you have this sudden tension between the players who aren't controlling that and the player who is. Literally, there are 2 separate manuals, one for the monster, one for the people who are trying to defeat it, and the scenario plays out from there. It could be that you have to go to certain rooms and try and exercise something. It could be that you have to try and get down to where the monster is and fight it. And and the stakes are high because often, for example, your sanity will be dropping, or your strength will be affected by this battle. And if you're trying to, for example, perform an exorcism and your sanity is low, well, the chances of being able to roll that one dice and get the roll that you need are fairly minute. So the stakes suddenly ramp up in the same way that they do in a horror movie. There's this sort of this rhythm that's beautiful in the board game and precisely mirrors that sense of initial hello exploration of a haunted house, and then things happening, and then bit by bit these things building up, and eventually all hell breaking loose. The fact that you can fall through the floor into the basement, the fact that you can find rooms that will beam from one place to another, the fact that sometimes there'll be a room that's so full of junk that you have to use your strength to try and escape it. The whole thing feels precisely like I hoped it would. It feels like a haunted house, it feels like a fun house, it feels like a horror movie. And with these different scenarios, these different potential hauntings that may or be unlocked, using this combination of the omen and the room that it's discovered in, you can have up to 50 different outcomes in this version of the game. I believe that there's at least one expansion that adds another 150, or is it 100? Making it 150 scenarios. So there's that cabin in the woods element, whereby depending on your behaviour, depending on what you find, the monster, the specifics of the scenario that you've let loose are completely different. It's magnificent, and also it doesn't take that long to play. I think each round is about an hour, maybe. It's just delicious, and it's precisely the sort of thing that not only I was hoping for, but also that I really love in my computer games and in my board games. Something that brings me into the world of the scenario, of the in this case the explorers and the monster. It's that sort of RPG element that's so delicious and so worth playing. Now, I don't want to keep on rambling on about this in so much as I think I'll just end up just repeating myself in terms of how great this is, but just rest assured, we are having a wonderful time with Betrayal at House on the Hill, and also actually it's not that expensive. I think it's £26, I think we saw on Amazon, for example. It compared to Pandemic Legacy, it's a steal, and compared to many legacy board games, for example, it's an absolute steal. And this, while sort of legacy adjacent, this isn't a game, although there is actually a version, there is a legacy game that continues the story from playthrough to playthrough. In this instance, it's not so much the fact that the story continues, it's the fact that the story can be anything, any one of those 50 different scenarios. This is what's going to keep us coming back to Betrayal at House on the Hill. Hopefully you found this interesting. Hopefully you've been inspired to give this game a go, because I strongly recommend it. And I want to play it now. Actually, so I think I might go and do that. Yeah. As ever, guys. Until next time, do take care. Bye bye.